I think I want to get the participants to reconsider what it means to teach or to use games in the classroom. Like how do they fit in? What can we do with them? That's one thing. And the second thing is, yeah, just to hopefully give them the motivation or the bravery to push back on the constraints that they face in their own context, to find that space for themselves to play in whatever you know format that means to them. Like, how can they play as teachers? How can they pedagogically re design their classroom to create these gratifying experiences for both them and the students? Yeah, that's something that I'd like them to think about and hopefully have the opportunity to do after listening to both the keynote and more structurally the workshop.
Today I'm speaking with Dr. James York of Meiji University, who will be giving both the keynote and featured workshop at our upcoming Hokkaido JALT Language Teaching Conference here in Sapporo. Dr. York's work focuses on ludic pedagogy, task-based language teaching, and the use of games, especially analog games, in language classrooms. James, thanks so much for agreeing to talk to me ahead of the conference.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
So I wanted to start off, I think something that struck me was the word ludic. I'm not even sure if I'm saying that right. How's the pronunciation there?
Yeah, ludic. So, how do we getting into the weeds straight away? That's cool. So the reason why am I using this word ludic? Okay, so I think a lot of the teachers, when they think about games in education or games in language teaching, which is our particular subdomain of that, they would perhaps think of the word gamification straight away. And gamification being the use of like points, badges, leaderboards, essentially extrinsic motivators to help students become engaged in the learning.
Okay.
So this is perhaps one of the most salient terms when it comes to use of games in teaching, this idea of gamifying a classroom. I don't really like that term. I think that, relying on too many extrinsic motivators is, well, basically that is what education, or that is what compulsory education is already. We've got grades, we've got punishments, we've got score tables for universities, blah blah blah. So that's one thing. I wanted to avoid the word gamification as much as possible because I don't really agree with what it's trying to do. And then the second thing is, when people think about games nowadays, they think of a limited subsection of games. So if I say game, I think the majority of people would think of like a digital game like Mario, or maybe Candy Crush on their mobile phone, or something digital in the digital domain.
Yeah.
And I think that, of course, yeah, games are a fantastic medium and we do need to utilize them more in the classroom. They need to be normalized as a teaching tool. So that's definitely one of my interests. But if we only focus on digital games, or a narrow swath of what actually could be done, I think we're limited in what we can do. So you think games, then you think, okay, play as well. So think about analog resources. So, board games, card games, conversation games, things like this. That's another part of gaming. And then you've got drama, you've got poems, language play, all of this extra stuff that comes in. And I think that all of that, to give a single word to it, we need a new kind of terminology, which me and my co-author Jonathan have decided to call ludic approaches to teaching, where you're not limited to technology like a digital game, but also that broad spectrum of things that fit under a gameful and playful banner. So yeah, ludic approaches to teaching is what we came up with.
Great. And is it fair to say that ludic has got like the connotation of play,
Absolutely,
playfulness, but also learning at the same time?
Absolutely. So we run a journal called Ludic Language Pedagogy. Let me move this mic over just a little bit. There we go. Ludic Language Pedagogy. It's made up of these three keywords. Ludic being the playful, the play or the game elements that you're using. Language obviously being the focus of the teaching. So in our case, L2, but it could also be L1. It could be literacy. It could be any kind of first, second, third language is okay. That fits under that particular manner. And then the pedagogy part is that all of this needs to be structured with some rigorous pedagogical design. So those are the three keywords that we kind of emphasize in equal proportions in our approach. The fact that you need to think about the kind of materials that you're using, the methodology that you're using, and then the way that you're teaching, the mediation that you're doing in there. So you've got ludic, playful approaches. You've got the language that you're actually teaching, and then how is that undergirded by pedagogy? So they're the three things that we think about.
Okay, great. So staying with this then, and
Yeah.
your playfulness. One thing that I kind of like, a gut reaction that I've got is that
Go for it.
using games in classrooms, you can sometimes think, well, it's not serious, it's not real study. And especially at the university level, or say for exam focused classes. And in Japan, you've got that sort of that mentality where you've just got to power it in and work as hard as you can. For teachers that are sort of thinking that, how would you sort of address that concern?
Yeah, it's a great concern, and there have been some studies where they've tried, where the researchers tried to incorporate a game or something in the classroom, and it's not worked because the students said, "We want to study. This is not the focus of the class." I think that again, it really does come down to the pedagogy. So, how are you structuring that game? How are you introducing it to the students? What are you telling them that it's going to be useful for? Are you giving them? Okay, so one of the problems about using games in the classroom is that they're obviously often used as like icebreakers, or just a bit of fluff on the end of a course that you've finished the textbook, so let's just play a game now, kind of thing. So it's kind of it is a superfluous tool that's put into the classroom. So the idea of having games or game culture as a core element would be something that we try to promote if you're going to use games, because I think we can be playful in our pedagogical approach without using games, and that is another avenue that being ludic opens up. Because if you think about games in the classroom, it is again limited. But if you think about, well, how do I as a teacher play? How do I structure my class in a playful manner? I might not even need to use a game. I think that being a playful teacher is also a second kind of arrow in the quiver to this whole ludic approach.
Great.
And we talk about that a lot. Again, I'm going to bring it out. So this is the book that we wrote. I think it was published last year. It's called Freedom to Play: A Ludic Language Pedagogy Primer. It's a bit of a meaty book, but it goes through all of this that we're talking about here in terms of, what is a game? What kind of games can we use? And then the other arrow, which we're just talking about here, is, well, what does it mean to be playful as a teacher? And how can we create playgrounds for students to play in our classrooms? So,
and from what you said there, it sounds like, framing it and selling it to the students as well is important. So, if you can sort of communicate to them how it's going to be beneficial for their learning, then they're more likely to sort of jump in on it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. We in the book and in the workshop. No, in the keynote that I'll be doing in Hokkaido, I'm going to talk about this idea of creating space in the classroom, and this is related to 5 keywords, which are on the, again, not a shameless plug, but on the oh, it's upside down on the edge of the book here. We have these 5 keywords for creating space in the classroom: safety, participation, agency, critical thinking, and experience. So I'll be talking you through all of these 5 keywords of how to make a playful, safe classroom. And again, the book that we created, the cover is about a playground. So we want to see more playgrounds in the classroom rather than Bob, again, you've only asked me one question, but we're still on it. But you mentioned the fact that a lot of students, they want to just grind and study, or maybe not the students, but the education that they're used to is just grinding and getting through material. What we kind of propose is a little bit radical in that, yes, students perhaps need to study for exams, and they have a lot of like rote memorization and stuff that they need to do, but the role of a school is not only that. We're educating the whole person, not just how many facts can you remember. And even in language teaching, I think that we often get bogged down by, how many words have they learned this year? How much grammar do they know? Whereas we can transform students, in terms of what they can do as a human. Like, what do they want to do? Do they want to go on a different, just like a playground? You don't have to do one thing. You can have some kids on the swing. You can have some kids on the slide. You can, have the classroom as a place where students can explore their own individual goals. And I think that that's something that schools should, endeavor to be. And if you really think about it, you can say, well, the factories of education are the jukus, especially in Japan, right? The cram schools. They're fantastic. They're fantastic at what they do. And if students are going to jukus to do all this kind of maths and language cramming, then what can we do in the classroom? I think it frees up a lot more space to explore projects or project-based learning, or exploratory kind of educational approaches that are kind of not being looked at. I think schools are trying to be like weak versions of Juku in a way. So I think there's a lot more that we can do there, especially as language teachers. So sorry, I'm getting off topic, but
that's fine. That's fine. So it sounds like it's an actual teaching approach, like it's overarching rather than just this is how you integrate games into your classes and how you use them. It's a sort of philosophy.
Absolutely, yes. It's that, and so it's both of what you just said. I mean, because I know that one of our goals is also to, like I said, normalize games as a teaching tool, because I think we use movies, we use YouTube videos, we use literature, books, music even. But I don't think games are considered like something that we just use and we don't really think about, like, oh yeah, I'm just using a game to teach ethics now, or
Right.
So yeah, definitely that's also one of the goals that we have with the book and our own approach. So
great. Okay. So you mentioned the workshop. So you're going to introduce a TBLT framework for games.
absolutely, yeah. So that's the philosophy side of things, the approach, the general overarching image, which we just mentioned, this idea of making playgrounds in the classroom, and what does it mean to play, and what does ludic mean. All of that is much more the keynote, and then the workshop itself goes into the nitty gritty of how can we teach with a game from a TBLT perspective. Yeah, you're right.
What do games allow language students to do that more traditional tasks wouldn't in a TBLT framework? Is there a sort of a key difference between what you're going to talk about in the workshop and what you're going to demonstrate and regular TBLT?
That's a good question. I think that what do games offer more than tasks? I don't think they offer more. I just think that they are fantastic examples of tasks. So why wouldn't you use them? That's kind of my thinking around it. Specifically with board games, which is one of the materials that I've been using since around 2015 now. So, wow, nearly a decade. Well, over a decade. That's crazy. But board games, they really lend themselves to a TBLT approach. Let me put it that way. Because if you think of a TBLT approach, you have a priming activity at the start. So it's kind of onboarding towards the task itself. Now, with a board game, you have to read the rule book before you play. So this is it's not a verbal, spoken, communicative activity. It's a reading, can I understand what's going on? Priming, because I'm getting the words that are probably going to be used in the gameplay itself. It's just a beautiful priming activity. And also, the second part of it is that if you don't understand the rule book, you can't actually do the task itself. So reading the rule book is almost a test, a pre-test.
Yeah.
So that's the first part where I think it fits in nicely. And then a lot of the board games that I'll be introducing and that I've used in my own context, they're basically, if you want to be a bit crass about it, they're glorified information gap activities. You have a goal, which is non-language linked. It's a real communicative goal that you're using your language resources to solve by cooperating, or in some cases, fighting against other people in that you're communicating with in the task in the game itself.
Yeah.
So I think the games themselves lend themselves to a fluency focus, like a task should, with a non-linguistic goal. And then in the post-task, what I do is I have students record their gameplay, because they're obviously focusing on fluency rather than accuracy. And then they can look at what they've said during the task, because they write it out, transcribe it, look for errors, watch native target language speakers on YouTube to get some new linguistic resources that they can then use in a subsequent gameplay session. So I think that they're just fantastic examples of a task for task-based language learning. And yeah, I'm going to be introducing a couple of different games that teachers can play for free on their devices. So we'll be doing that in the workshop.
Great. So that sounds fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's going to get a lot out of that. And the game that we're going to look at in the workshop is a digital game. It's on the phone.
So it originally was a board game, but it also runs in the browser. So I know that 99.9% of all Japanese junior high schools, even elementary schools now, have students with like a tablet each. And so you can run this game on their tablets without actually purchasing the game itself. I'll also be introducing some print and play games that you can use in your context. And print and play games are as they sound. You basically go to a website, download a PDF, print it out, and then you can play it. So very low tech, very frugal kind of resources for teachers to be using in their context. So you don't have to buy a PlayStation 5. You don't have to buy anything outside of the ordinary. Really, that's another key part that I think that keeps teachers back from thinking about games. They think, oh, games, or that's just like Switch, PlayStation 5. I can't get that in the classroom. Yeah. Whereas you actually be surprised. There are a lot of low tech resources available.
Great. Okay. Okay. So for teachers who want to sort of try this, but sort of in a low risk way, what's something that they could change? Next Monday when they walk into the classroom, what could they do differently to sort of embrace this approach?
Wow. Quickly. That's a big one. Just randomly going on a Monday, and let's say you've been using a textbook for so long, and you've got your classroom. The first thing, not in terms of using games, but in terms of being a more playful, ludic teacher, it might sound a bit cliche, but show a little bit more humility. Like make more mistakes. Forget about the textbook for a while, close the textbook for a while, and just engage on a person-to-person human level.
Right.
Say things like "so what" more, like question the classroom itself. Why are we doing this, guys? So what? Who cares about this? Just be real. I think that's one way that teachers can be quite playful. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I guess it's quite common for teachers to get set in their ways and do the opposite to what you just said. They've got the textbook, they've got their methods, and they use that almost as a way to distance themselves from to protect themselves almost.
Yeah, that's definitely this is another huge avenue of interest of mine. But one of the key words here again about safety is that the classroom should be a safe place, and to show that it's a safe place for failure, for putting your heart on your sleeve, whatever you want to say. I think that the teacher does have to show that humility and really engage on a different level rather than. Another thing about again, this idea of making your classroom into a playground where students are basically autonomously engaged in their own project, or engaged in their own work, is that sometimes the students will be researching things that the teacher is not an expert on. The students become an expert, and so that can be quite scary for teachers, that they're giving the control to the students. So
absolutely. Yeah. So humility is important in that respect too.
Definitely. I mean, as a concrete example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the website Reddit, which is like a news aggregation website.
A little.
So it's basically like like millions of different communities all around specific interests, like hobbies. And in my own context, I had students first of all consider what their own hobbies and interests were. So I was working at a science and technology university at that point. So a lot of students were interested in like anime, games, and like Japanese music. So I said, well, look, there's Reddit subreddits that you can join for that particular community. And then I had the students join the Reddits, analyze a bunch of posts to see how it differed from their own understanding of the community, like their own Japanese knowledge of, say, One Piece, whereas the Western kind of view of One Piece, what was different. Then I had them participate in those communities. And a lot of the times students were coming to me with like memes from these subreddits saying, "Mr. York, what does this mean?" And I was like, "I don't know, because I don't know the culture of what you're showing me, and I can tell you what the language means." And so I told them a bit about what was going on in terms of language,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, right, now I get it, because in this episode, blah blah blah." I was like, "Yes, cool, you've got it, you figured it out, excellent, go for it." So it's kind of like this. Me not being the expert was kind of interesting, just to see them geek out on different things. Yeah,
And like, yeah, you've got to like let go and just
definitely,
give up the
definitely.
control. Yeah, yeah. Great. So you emphasize preparation, analysis, and reflection. So
Mm.
could you unpack that a little? Like, why are these three things so important?
Uh, okay, so I think we have a tendency in language teaching, especially textbook-based language teaching, to never kind of retread the same ground, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of a race to the finish. It's We've got to get to this page by this time, and I just don't think it's very effective. Right? I don't think there's a lot of efficacy. Huh? Effective. We'll just say effective.
Okay. Effective.
I just don't think it's very effective. I don't think a lot's actually learnt. So I think one of the other concepts that I kind of use is this idea of slowing down teaching. And if you're going to use a game, or you're going to do some kind of project, just slow it down. And so a big preparation stage in the classroom. Okay, this is important. I think with the advent of like AI tools, and even before AI tools, we had this concept of flipped classroom, like flipped learning.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a bit idealistic. You expect the students to do like a couple of hours preparation work by themselves at home before they get to class. And the reality is that I think most of us have experienced that
Mm.
that's not actually what happens.
Mm.
So I do a lot more, social cultural theory, backed kind of group collaborative work, doing preparation in the classroom before we even get started with the project, right? So a lot of preparation before we start. What were the other two things you said? Analysis.
Analysis, yeah, and reflection.
Okay, yeah. So the analysis is this is related to like do it again. Like if
Hmm.
we're gonna do something, let's do it twice, because the first time, and then this comes from like board gamers. If you've ever played a board game for the first time you ever played doesn't go well, because you're still kind of getting used to the rules. And I think that that's a very good metaphor for teaching in general, right? That
Yeah.
if we're going to have the students do something, don't expect it to be perfect the first time,
Mm.
and definitely do something first two times at least.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to do something two times, then you have this big opportunity in between those sessions. Like, so let's say, for example, a task, or
Mhm.
playing a game as the task. Between those two sessions, we have this kind of excellent opportunity for both the analysis and the reflection stage, right? First of all, analyzing what we did in the first playthrough, what went well, what didn't go well, how do target language speakers do this compared to how we do it? Oh,
Mm.
they do it like that. Oh, we can use that too. So you've got this huge opportunity for analysis and reflection,
Yeah.
which you can then use towards subsequent play sessions and activities. So yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
I guess you can switch if it's pairs or small groups, switch the groups around for the next time you play the
absolutely.
game. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, or change the game rules or something, or add
Mm.
some additional rules. For example, again, talking about using games as a tool here. If we're going to play twice or three times, then the second time I'll have them, again, this is me being playful as a teacher, or me being ludic as a teacher, is that I'll say, okay, you've already played this game once, you've figured it out now. Let's add a new rule to the game, all right? To say, if we speak Japanese during the gameplay session, then something bad will happen in the game. So, for example, I'll lose a coin, or I have to reveal something, or So it's keeping it within the same game play itself, but it's adding new rules which are related to the course. So yeah, you can do things like that.
Great. That sounds great. Um, we touched on this earlier, but so how has working with playing games, how do you think it's changed you as a teacher? You mentioned 15, you've been doing it 15 years.
About 10 years, yeah. Okay, so when I first started working at the university level in 2010,
Mhm.
I was mandated a textbook, and my only goals for the class were to get to certain pages by certain dates. And that was the most depressing teaching I've ever done. That was the most depressed I've been as a teacher. I was so bored. The students were bored. You know, serious lack of third keyword, safe space, right? Safety, participation, agency, a huge lack of agency for both me and the students. It just saps any motivation, right? And so by trying things in class, failing things in class, you know, doing things like that, by making my own textbook around gameplay and stuff, it kind of, yeah, totally changed my life, really. Yeah, much more happier now.
Right, because we spend so much time like teaching. So if it's going well and you're enjoying it, then life's better for everybody.
Definitely. I mean, there's a famous study, I think maybe 2008, something like that, about what is the number one factor for student happiness in the classroom, and it was teacher autonomy.
Teacher autonomy.
Yeah,
Wow.
happy teacher, happy students.
Right, right, right. That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate to all that. That's great. Okay, James. So, you know, finally, for those joining us at the conference, what do you hope that the participants are going to walk away with after your keynote and after your workshop?
Um, I think I want to get the participants to reconsider what it means to teach or to use games in the classroom. Like, how do they fit in? What can we do with them? You know, that's one thing. And the second thing is, yeah, just to hopefully give them the motivation or the bravery to push back on the constraints that they face in their own context, to find that space for themselves to play in whatever you know, format that means to them. Like, how can they play as teachers? How can they pedagogically re design their classroom to create these gratifying experiences for both them and the students? Yeah, that's something that I'd like them to think about, and hopefully have the opportunity to do after listening to both the keynote and more structurally the workshop.
Yeah, that sounds great. And you know, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure everyone else who watches this interview really excited about, you know, meeting you and listening to your ideas. It really resonates with me what we've talked about today. It really, really does, yeah. Because
Good, thanks.
I think part of my teaching approach is always sort of like acknowledged this aspect.
Mm,
I don't think I've embraced it in the way that you have. So I've got it to a certain extent, but you know, we're all sort of doing this balancing act, aren't we? We do have these syllabus. We've got the syllabus. We've got to be at unit 12 by December and all that. So
yeah.
there is that sort of pressure. But
Mm,
yeah, like you said, it can sap the motivation from everybody, teachers,
mm,
students alike. So
mm.
yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah. So James, thank you so much for today. It's been great talking to you, and we're really looking forward to welcoming you to Sapporo and to the conference in February.
Thanks, Bob. See you
Great.
there.